As a black wolf, Annalise should not have a mate, yet she unexpectedly bonds with Alexander. Welcome to the Alpha's Love channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Chapter 24, Annalise's POV. The sun rays kissed my face as I stared at the trees passing by in a blur, though the car window and the wind caressed my hair, blowing a few loose strands. It was enough to calm down the previous nerves. It has been an hour since we left the castle. Unexpectedly, things were going pretty well since none of us bothered speaking. Despite this, the air felt heavy and thick with tension because of the unspoken words hanging in the air around us. None of us dared address the elephant in the room. What did he want to talk about last time? Alexander was sitting next to me, deadly handsome yet deadly like he always did. Instead of his black suits, he opted for black cargo pants and black shirt. I could not help but look at his profile as he drove. The muscles in his arm flexed as he controlled the steering wheel effortlessly with one hand while the other rested lazily on the lever. The light sun ray shone on his face as the few stray strands of hair on his face casted light shadows. It's rude to stare at someone, he spoke out of nowhere, breaking the silence. Glad to know you can talk, I said sarcastically, and I was looking at the view outside. Don't flatter yourself. How was the view then? To my agent extraordinaire, Nocturnal, caught that thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I rolled my eyes and focused my attention back in front, actually trying to enjoy the view of the vast and lush greenery surrounding us. He did not say anything as he continued driving. Are you always this quiet or just with me? Trying to break the ice a little. Why, he asked instead of answering. Just wanted to know whether you are a boring person or not. And what did you decide? Was he actually trying to have a conversation? Maybe this would not be as bad as I thought. That you are boring. You never speak unless it is related to the war. You don't joke. You have only 2 expressions. I checked the expressions off my fingers. 1, glare. 2nd, no expression. I heard him scoff and I smirked. I would rather be boring than interacting with others. Especially with your family. Touch, I agreed. Since we are talking about my family, what do you think of them? What do you want to know? Your thoughts about our enmity and my family, since you always seem to be at each other's throat. I think the enmity is useless considering the fact that it happened between our grandparents. He explained. At least there is one thing we agree on, I said out loud. I did not even know about this whole enmity thing until the night of the meeting where you just barged in like you owned the kingdom. I rolled my eyes and I saw the end of his lips curl into a smirk. It is one of the most stupid things my family has done, and that is saying a lot. He cleared his throat before asking, You and your family. He started awkwardly. You don't have a great relationship. Although he was asking, it still sounded like he knew the truth. Not the best but not the worst. You still have not answered my entire question. What do you think about my family? You really want to know? He asked and I nodded. It could not be worse than my own opinions about them. They are somewhat bearable except for your dad and Anne. Your dad does not seem keen to end this enmity at all. Does not take a genius to figure that one out. I let out a small laugh. And your brother? Well, he can be a pain in the ass at times. Struggling to find the right words. He will be a good king, but not a great king. To my agent extraordinaire, Nocturnal, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Maybe with time he will change and improve, but right now, he's just overconfident. To my agent extraordinaire, Nocturnal, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I doubt that word exists in my family's dictionary. At least not the change in a good way. 1. How old are you actually? I asked as I remembered I knew little to nothing about him. He let out a small chuckle at the question that made me feel something in my stomach. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It was very rare he actually showed any emotion except for anger and irritation. 21. My eyes widened slightly at the revelation. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You are younger than Ray Ann? I asked in disbelief. Since he was the king, I thought he would be older than Ray and or at least the same age. He nodded, still looking in front. Then when did you become king? At 15. Being king at 15 was not common since most parents thought their heir was not trained enough and is not ready to handle all the responsibilities that came with the crown. I did not know Alexander, but I could tell he was a great leader and not just a good leader. It was clear from how he interacted with his people. They respected him and not out of fear. From what I saw, many looked up to him from elderly to young ones. He treated the others with respect too, irrespective of title and rank, and most importantly he placed all his trust in them. He may be reserved and quiet, but his actions spoke louder. He was born to be a leader, and I was not saying it because of having the red water of the previous king. He deserved the title, and I never saw him take advantage of it. Did you always want to be king? I wanted to be a powerful leader. I nodded, letting his words sink in. Do you want to be a leader someday? I never thought about it. During my 19 years of existence, I have spent 16 of them trying to get back to my family and making them proud of me to the point that I stopped thinking about me. Another year went by in self-loathing with constant thoughts that I was not good enough. And finally, another year went by as I came to terms with the fact that it was too late. Where would you be today if there was no war? He asked curiously. I don't know, but I certainly would not be back at the kingdom. I admit it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. How does it feel to be king, especially since you are this young? At times it can be stressful. People have doubts sometimes. Others trust me. I just try to be as just as I can and provide them with the best. It is all worth it in the end when they are safe. You make a great leader. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Looking at him, he turned to look at me and I gave him a light smile. What is your favorite color? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I thought you would say black for a second. I rolled my eyes. What about you? I like the different shades of teal and blue. I don't really have a fixed one, I said after pondering. Do you have any favorite movie? Movies are not my thing. I really loved the Maze Runner movie. All of them. I added, but I also like Marvel movies. So in short, I don't have one favorite. You are into the classics then. Do you have any hobby? He asked the next question. Watching movies, if it counts as one. Another chuckle escaped him. It honestly just depends on my mood. He did not answer. I saw his ears turn slightly red as a faint blush tinted his cheeks. He was blushing. Still shocked, I took my phone that was resting on my lap and took a picture. Hearing the click, he sent me a glare and I just smiled at him sheepishly. Out of nowhere, he reached his hand that was resting on the lever out to grab my phone. A surprised yelp left my mouth as I moved my phone out of his reach, wiggling in my seat as I tried to move away from him and close to the door. Give me the phone, princess. I could not help but laugh as he desperately reached for the phone, his gaze shifting between me, my hand and the road. Alexander, watch the road. I don't want to die this young, I said in between my laughs. I froze for a second as I realized it was the first time I called him by his name. He seemed to realize the same thing as his gaze lingered on me for a few seconds extra before he focused his attention back on the road. "Delete the picture now or I will pull over. Grab that phone from you and throw it outside the window." He warned. "No," I replied. He did not reply, but he actually pulled over the side of the road and killed the engine. He turned towards my seat, removing his seatbelt. I hid the phone behind my back as he moved closer to me. "The phone," he stated as he leaned towards me, causing me back up further against the door. He shifted in his seat, making it easier for him to move. While he was easily getting closer to me, I was trapped between the door and him. I shook my head at him stubbornly. He placed his hands at my sides, caging me. His scent invaded my senses. Every breath I took, his scent filled my nose due to how close he was. His face was mere centimeters away from mine, and I could feel his hot breath fanning over my face. My hands tightened around my phone as I tried to keep my nerves in check. "It's just a picture." My voice came out breathless and shaky. "I will not ask you again, princess. Give me the phone." His voice was lower than I ever heard before, and his eyes had somehow turned darker as something hot flashed in his eyes. "No," I replied firmly despite my insides melting like hot wax. He did not say anything. My breath hitched in my throat when his hand came on my stomach. Slowly, it moved to my side, and I immediately regretted my clothing choice. His fingers were in direct contact with my skin due to the cropped turtleneck I had on. My skin felt like it was on fire as his fingers left a trail of never never, ending sparks on my skin. My breaths turned shallow as we locked gazes, but his hand kept moving. Something hot burned his cold, dark eyes. His breath had turned shallow too as he looked to be restraining himself. His hands were on my back, moving towards my hand that held the phone. His hand enclosed mine as he tried prying the phone out of my hand, but I did not budge. "I will not delete it. It is my phone, and my picture," he retorted. "I will delete it." His hand stopped over mine as he listened. "But," he sighed as the word left my mouth, and I bit back a smile. "You have to tell me your hobby." "Sure," he asked warily, and I nodded quickly. He retreated to his seat and I adjusted my position, bringing my hand back on my lap. "So, cooking," he mumbled. A smile etched on my face as I imagined him behind a kitchen counter, concentrated, mixing something in a bowl, an apron tied around him with a little bit of flour spread on it, as his face and his black hair disheveled along with a small smile on his face. "Imagine him cooking shirtless," Crescent added dreamily. I shook my head quickly as an image of him shirtless popped in my mind. Thinking of something. His voice pulled me back to reality, and his teasing tone was enough for me to know that he was aware of my thoughts. I just shook my head slightly. "The picture," he reminded me. I huffed and showed him my phone. "The picture gone." He looked at me suspiciously but decided to let it go as he started the car again, and I smirked internally. Instead of deleting the picture, I had just moved it to my hidden folder. "You better put a strong password on that phone of yours because I know you have not deleted that picture," he said a few seconds later, sending me a playful glare. "I don't know what you are talking about." I shrugged as I looked outside, a small smile on my lips. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Next question," I continued. "How is it at your kingdom?" "Definitely not like described by the rumors," he simply said. "All werewolves is talkative, or just you? I am limited edition." I joked, and at this he let out a laugh. Not a smirk, not a chuckle, a laugh. He looked so different when he laughed. He looked like the 21-year-old he was and not the king, bearing the responsibility of keeping thousands safe. I could not help but take another picture of him. Upon hearing the click, he looked at me and rolled his eyes playfully but did not try to snatch the phone or anything. Instead, he just said, "A strong password." I just shook my head and debated whether to ask the next question or not. Afraid it would ruin the atmosphere, but I decided to do it anyway. What about your family? You never mentioned them, I asked cautiously. I saw his grip around the steering wheel tighten as his whole body tensed. His jaw clenching and all previous playfulness disappeared into thin air. You don't need to tell me if you're not comfortable. He let out a sigh, letting his body relax a little, but what he did shocked me. He actually opened up. My mother died when I was 10. His voice was strained and sad as he spoke, a faraway look in his eyes. My father died when I was 15. How his voice changed from 1 foot of sadness to 1 foot of low shocked me. That's why I took over so young. Do you miss them? I asked softly. My dad, no. He let out a bitter laugh. My mom. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Despite the sadness in his eyes, there was a faint smile as he talked about her. How was she? The question left my mouth before I knew it. Perfect. Longing evident in his voice. She was the perfect mother I could ask for. She was always there for me and always supported me. She was my backbone. I reached out my hand, as I placed it on top of his hand that rested on the lever. I gave his hand a reassuring squeeze and he looked at me for a split second before looking in front. I am certain that wherever she is now, she's really proud of you. I retracted my hand and decided to ask something else to change the topic. Surprisingly, he was not annoyed or irritated or anything after the previous question. He answered all of them like he did earlier. He also let out a few laughs, cracked a few jokes here and there, and threatened me countless of time regarding my passwords because I kept taking pictures of him. This turned from awkward to fun. I should really thank my grandmother once we get back. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I had my reasons to love her, Crescent chirped. Chapter 25 analyzes POV. If bored people worked in a restaurant, I let out a small yawn. Would they need to wear a hairnet? I completed the question. Alexander laughed beside me in his seat. Maybe you should see, Princess. He looked at me, amused. My eyelids felt heavy as I struggled to keep them open. For the past few hours, we have been driving and it was already night. Throughout the entire way, the questions never stopped. If I ran out of questions, Alexander would ask me. We asked so many questions that I lost count. The best part was that none of us asked each other questions about their family, clearly understanding that it was a sore topic for both of us, and despite the previous question about his family, Alexander was still in a good mood for the rest of the drive. But apparently, the tiredness was messing with my brain as I had been asking random and weird questions to him. If you have described something as indescribable, haven't you already described it? Why is it called beauty sleep even though you wake up looking like a hot mess? Do you think if anything is possible, it's still possible for anything to be impossible? If you punch yourself in the face and it hurts, are you weak or strong? If you had the chance to invent a country, what would you name it? Are you gay? If you could have a superpower, what would it be? If you could be king for one day, what would you do? Despite the weird and illogical questions, he actually answered all of them, joking around and laughing at times as the absurdity of my questions kept increasing. I just hummed in response at his words and closed my eyes, feeling exhausted. Just as I felt like I was about to fall asleep, the car came to an abrupt stop. Was it not for Alexander's hand holding me back, I would have gone straight through the windshield. What happened? I asked as I rubbed the sleep off my eyes, yawning at the same time. Oh, I have to check, he said as he removed his seatbelt and got out of the car. I stretched my arms above me before reaching for my bag from the back seat. I fished out Amelia's diary and the map from my bag. We were still pretty far away and it would take an entire day to finally reach the place we were assigned. I folded the map and got out of the car to join Alexander. What's the problem? I am not sure, but I don't think it will start anytime soon. Closing the hood. What should we do now? I unfolded the map and laid it on the hood. If we go by car, it will take us another day to reach it. I motioned to the mark. By foot it will be even longer and more painful. He traced the different places on the map. Deepen thought before he stopped on a small dot. It looks like there is a town here. If we continue down this road, we should reach it. He motioned to the road. We can find shelter and get someone to fix the car. I nodded, folding the map again as we rounded the car. He opened the back seat and took his bag while I took mine from my seat. I went to stand in front of the hood again, waiting for him to roll up the windows and lock the car. Your bag. He extended his hand as he came next to me. I dismissed him, but he kept his hand extended in front of me, an eyebrow raised. I sighed before giving him the bag. A small signboard on the side of the road, enthusiasm, indicated that we reached the town that was shown on the map. Soon small, run-down buildings appeared on both sides on the road as street light flickered. Garbage cans had been tipped over with pools of garbage on the road. Small groups of men, drunk men, loitered in the dark alleys. The putrefying smell emanated from the surrounding and I scratched my nose while Alexander remained unaffected, though he seemed alert, his eyes scanning our surrounding. After a walk of 10 minutes we stood in front of a 2-story building. Motel Shine. Read the old, flickering neon sign in the dark that hung on the entrance only by a single cable, causing it to tilt on one side. The name completely contrasted the rusty and old appearance of the building. The light streaming from the windows on the different floor told me we were the only ones here today. Having no other choice, we entered the shabby building. When we opened the door, a bell hanging over it chimed, signaling our presence. A pungent smell, cigarettes, liquor mixed with something stale and rotten, filled my nostrils and I felt the bell rise in my throat. With Alexander behind me, I walked towards the reception. The man who I assumed was the owner shifted his attention to us. Welcome to Motel Shine. How can I help you? Despite the bright smile on his face, he sounded and looked creepy. The look in his eyes made me wary of him. Could we get 2 rooms for the night, please? I said politely, ignoring the weird feeling. Groups of people stood in the corners. While some looked normal and decent, others were wasted as they smoked and laughed loudly. The interior was decent except for the paint peeling off, spider webs, roaches and drunk people. My gaze returned back to the man behind the counter. I frowned as I found his eyes fixed my body as he eyes me up and down. The menacing look, a predator eyeing his prey, did not go unnoticed by me. He lifted his gaze and met mine. I raised an eyebrow at him and was about to speak up when I felt a presence behind me and an arm wrapped around my waist. Definitely the wrong day to wear a cropped top. Alexander tightened his hold around my waist and pulled to his side. Actually, we would take only 1 room. He stared down at the man, his eyes conveying what he did not put in words. I saw the man visibly shudder under his heated glare. The man quickly took a key from a drawer and handed it to us. He showed us the way and we asked him to find someone to take care of our car. Our room was on the 2nd floor, so we had to take the steps which would not stop creaking with every step. Why did you take 1 room? I can take care of myself, I asked. I don't doubt that. But I do not want to take any chance. He opened the room and motioned me to get inside first. The room was small with minimal furniture. A small bed was pushed against the wall in the far right corner and a nightstand on its side. A small wardrobe was placed a few feet away from the nightstand. On the left side, there was the bathroom and a small seating area. We took off our shoes near the door as we walked further in the room. I was still taking in the room when I let a squeal. taking a few steps back as I felt something run over my feet. Alexander placed his hand on my shoulder, preventing me from falling as he stood behind me. EWW. I said as I looked at the small rat running around the room as if it was in a playground. My hands were placed over my heart, trying to calm it down. It's not funny, I said once I saw Alexander smirking down at me when I turned around. He shook his head slightly, walking past me into the bathroom to get changed. While he was in the bathroom, I took the time and went through a few more pages of Amelia's diary. I found out a little more about her, especially about her love for gardening. Strong Odin Macrobot was also known as J. Fine was her favorite. I caught a glimpse of her gardening in the old photos stuck on the pages. As Alexander left the bathroom, I closed the diary and placed it on the nightstand as I took my bag with me in the bathroom. I took a quick shower and changed into some sweatpants and an oversized shirt I was considerate enough to bring. As I exited the bathroom, I found Alexander sitting on the edge of the bed, going through Amelia's diary. "Where did you get this?" he asked as he sensed my presence. "I accidentally came across this room in the palace where I found out about the war and about Amelia," I said nonchalantly. He hummed in response as he kept the diary back in its original position. I kept my bag on the armchair along with his nags when I heard him speak. "I'll sleep on the floor and you can take the bed." I was about to say something when he beat me to it. "Except if you want to sleep on the floor with the rat," he added in a teasing voice. "Whatever." He took a pillow from the bed and placed it on the floor. I honestly felt bad for him, but I was not interested in having rats run over me or feast on me while I was asleep. A shudder went through my body at the idea. I turned off the lights and took my place on the bed. I closed my eyes, letting sleep engulf me. Chapter 26 analyzes POV. I no longer felt my feet as I ran with all the force left in me. I did not know where I was going. There was only darkness. No matter where I turned, I saw only darkness. But I knew I had to keep going. I could not stop. My feet gave up and I tripped, falling on my knees. Tears fell freely from my eyes, wetting my cheeks, and my mind clouded with different scenarios. I was panting for breath as I felt my heart clenching and the pressure on my chest increased tenfold. A low yet menacing growl in the distance forced me to keep going. They were still behind me, and I no longer had any strength or motivation to fight. Gathering all the strength I had left, I scurried to my knees, faltering a little. I saw faint silhouettes in the distance and ran towards them, finding hope again. Relief flooded through me as I neared them. I let out a shaky breath as the familiar faces of my family came in view. They were all standing there, looking at me as I ran towards them. The relief was short-lived as I saw their expression change into one of hatred and anger. Fear filled my senses as I approached them. They all had the same expression as they eyed my weak, trembling form, a wicked smile. "Help me." My voice came out as a faint whisper, my voice shaky. Instead of them helping me, an echo of evil laughs resonated in my ears, and echoing in the distance. "You are nothing to us. Why should we help you? You are such a burden. You are weak. Help yourself or die for all we care." Their mocking voice haunted me as I felt myself giving up, too tired to keep going when there was nothing at the end. I felt my heart clench as they all turned and walked away from me, laughing at my misery. With every step they took, my resolve got weaker and I felt numb. I no longer felt anything. No happiness, no nervousness, no sadness, no anger, no hatred, no fear, nothing. I felt like a living corpse as I awaited my damned fate with open hands. I could hear the growls, like the ticking of the clock, each time closer to me, but I did not move. It was too late, and nothing could be done. I fell to my knees again, my hands clenched into fists as I felt the growls in my bone. While I was still crying, I felt someone's hand under my cheek and I opened my eyes to see the face of none other than my mate. I was shocked to see him, but also a slight relief. Unlike the others, he had a look of adoration on his face as he gave me a little smile, his eyes soft and encouraging. In this prison of darkness, he was my light, guiding me. "You can do it." Wiping the tears from my face before he got up and started walking away. "Don't leave." I found myself shouting behind me. He turned to look at me. "Please." "I won't," he reassured me, and his voice held a promise. "You have to get through this. I know you will fight this." I saw Crescent step up next to him. "You will fight this, Lizzie." Both of them left. Their words replaced the haunting voice of my family. They played in my head on repeat. Non-stop. I no longer cared about what others thought about me. They did not matter. Only Crescent and Alexander mattered to me. As long as they believed in me, nobody could bring me down. I would not let them. I would never give up. I would rise, even if I was on my own, because I knew they would be waiting for me. It was worth fighting till the end because they were at the end. They have to be there. The red water, i.e. nightmare I have been trying to escape, was close. I could feel it right behind me. With shaky legs I got up, turning around and coming face to face with them. They were right in front of me. Their void eyes stared right in mine. The countless lifeless bodies and wolves moved towards me, a menacing G-look on their face as the wolves snarled. Red water covered their bodies and the memories flashed in my mind. But I replaced them with images of Alexander and Crescent. I used all my strength and let out my powers. A blinding white light left me as I swirled around my nightmare. As it made contact with the bodies, they disappeared one by one in the form of dust. I let out a breath of relief as the last few dust particles flew away in the air, taking with it the nightmare that was haunting me. Nothing was left behind, nothing but peace and tranquility. With a small smile, I turned around. The smile turned into a full grin as I saw Alexander and Crescent on the other side. Alexander was looking at me with pride and adoration as his eyes shone in the darkness. Crescent let out a howl as she looked at me. "You did it," Alexander said. Nodding, I sprinted towards him but stopped dead in my tracks at the sight. Suddenly, a white light flashed in front of me as it collided with Alexander and Crescent, causing their bodies to turn to dust as they faded away. While I was still under shock, the ground opened underneath me and I felt right through it into an endless abyss. I found myself screaming not because I was about to die, but because I lost Alexander and Crescent. The image was buried in my mind. I screamed and screamed as I kept falling deeper in the dark pit that was my fate. An abyss where I would never reach the bottom. The nightmare was not stuck in my mind. I was stuck in the nightmare and I kept reliving it every night. It was an endless cycle where I would always find myself in the dark, alone, no matter what I did. If I accepted my fate, I would end up in darkness. If I fought back, I still ended up in darkness. This cycle tore my heart and mind to pieces. Just as I closed my eyes and let go of my body, I heard a voice in the distance. It was muffled, but it was there. Then I felt my body shaking as the voice grew clearer and louder. I heard my name being called several times and the shaking increased. Something passed in my body as my eyes flew open, and I sat up straight. My whole body shook as my breath came out ragged. My face was wet with cool sweat and warm tears that fell freely. My hands fisted the sheets on my side. I looked to the side to be met with Alexander's worried face. Immediately the image of him disappearing as dust particles flashed in my mind and I sobbed louder. As he realized that my state only kept getting worse, he called me close to him, wrapping his hands around me. He rubbed his hand on my back in a soothing manner as the other one rested at the back of my head, holding me tight. "It's over now." His voice came out calming and low, calming my nerves slightly. I let go of the sheets and wrapped my hands around his torso. letting the tears fall. He whispered sweet things to me and rested his chin on my head. He tightened his hold around me and waited for me to calm down. It was just a dream. My sobs turned into heavy, shaky breaths. He did not budge. He just held me there. He was safe and right next to me, and Crescent was also with me. Relief flooded through me as the thought sunk in. I let out a small breath as I released my hold around his and slowly pulled away from each other. His hold loosened around me, but he kept his hands on my upper arms. Instantly I missed the warm and safe feeling of being in his embrace. One of his hands cupped my face. He wiped the tears with his thumb before removing the strands of hair from my face, tucking it behind my ears. I felt a sense of déjà vu as I remembered the night I had the panic attack. He always had to see me at my worst, feeling better. His voice slightly worried as assessed my face. I cleared my voice. Sorry to have woken you up. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobin. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Embarrassed as I averted my gaze from him, he tilted my face so that I would look at him. You should go back to sleep now. I nodded. He proceeded to go back to sleep on the floor, but before I knew what I was doing, I stopped him by the wrist. Can you sleep next to me? Please, I asked with pleading eyes. He did not answer as he looked to be contemplating the idea. As the moment stretched longer, I felt the embarrassment hitting with the slight red water rush. Just as I was about to tell him to dismiss the idea, he replied, To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobin. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. At his response, I was about to smile, but I refrained from doing so. While he got his pillow from the floor, I moved towards the other side of the bed, giving him more space. Adjusting his pillow, he got under the covers next to me. I laid down on my side, facing the other way, pleased to have him by side. I felt the bed dip and he moved closer to me. I felt his chest press against my back, and before I knew it, his hands were around my waist, pulling me closer to him until my body was flushed against his. Not having any second thoughts, I turned on the other side and wrapped my hands around his torso and buried my face in the crook of his neck, his scent calming, and I felt myself let out a sigh of relief. He adjusted his position and tightened his hold around me, and for a second I thought he was afraid of letting me go. Sleep now, Analyze, he said as he rested his chin on top of my head and played with my hair. I could not stop the smile from playing on my lips as I heard him use my name without the title princess. I just hummed in response, not able to form any sentence or word. Never among my twisted, weird thoughts had I imagined we would be here. I never thought Alexander would be on a mission together, just the two of us. I did not expect having to share a room in a motel when I left the castle earlier, let alone sleep on the same bed. Only a few months ago, I was graduating and thinking about staying in the human world. Being held in his arms was the best feeling I ever felt. His hold around me was like a protective shield. As he held me there, his hands playing with my hair, I felt something. A feeling I have craved for as long as I could remember. The feeling of being loved, protected, cherished and valued. The feeling of home. Alexander, I said before I fell asleep. He did not answer, but he stopped playing with my hair, waiting for me to continue. Thank you. He hummed in response and he continued playing with my hair. My eyes got heavy and I fell into what was probably one of the best sleep. The last thing I remembered before falling asleep was a light kiss being placed on my forehead, which made me smile. You better thank your grandmother for this, Lizzie, Crescent had said happily. Chapter 27. Analyzes POV. I let out a small groan as I felt the sun rays hitting my face, making me bury my head deeper in my pillow, pulling the covers over me. My eyes fluttered open on their own as the sound of the shower drifted from the bathroom. I lowered the covers till my chin and inspected the bed. Indeed, it was empty. Alexander must have woken up before me. The reminders of last night came to my mind as I sat up straight, stretching and yawning at the same time. I could not help but smile lightly. Twice I was having difficulties, and both times Alexander was there to help me. He did not make me feel ashamed of having a panic attack, nor having nightmare, and I was thankful for that. The grin still on my face, I reached towards the nightstand, taking my phone, checking for any updates, but there were none. Switching it off, I passed a hand through my tangled hair, and the door to the washroom opened and Alexander walked out. He was only wearing his pants that were hanging low on his waist, and I felt my mouth run dry at the sight. The clothes he wore did not justice to his built body. He had tones ABS and a deep V line. Just like I had suspected, he had tattoos covering his chest, and they went down both his arms, stopping at his wrists. The tattoos had nothing in common. It ranged from words to flowers to symbols. However, looking at it as a whole, they fit perfectly. They reminded me of the different pieces of a puzzle. His body was not flawless. I could see faint marks on the lighter skin underneath the ink designs. The scars somehow made him look even better in my eyes. Just like actions speak louder than words, his scars and blemishes conveyed stories that even the person could not tell. It represented his strength and bravery, and that he was still standing in front of me, striving. He had a towel in his hand with which he was drying his wet hair. The droplets from his hair fell on his chest, rolling down his inked body until they got absorbed by the material of his pants. Unknowingly, I gulped at the drool-worthy sight, and I was so tempted to take a picture. My phone was already in my hand. Before I could do anything, the towel landed on my face, breaking me out of my trance. Don't even think of it. As I removed the towel from my face, groaning, he was on my side. He snatched the phone from my hand and stuffed it in his pockets before taking the towel back. I glared at him while he had a small smirk playing on his lips. Go get ready. I rolled my eyes and got off the bed, taking my bag with me. I entered the bathroom. I splashed some cold water on me to try and calm myself down and reduce the redness of my flushed cheeks. I took a shower and quickly got dressed, stuffing my clothes back in the bag. I exited the bathroom and saw Alexander on his phone. While he talked to whoever was on the other side of the line, I did a quick check of the room, ensuring we did not leave anything behind. What happened? I asked as I gathered Amelia's diary and the map. Queen Eleanor called. They did not find anything at their spot. It looked deserted for decades. I just hope she is at one of these two spots, or I will never hear the end of it from my family. I muttered, already irritated at the thought of getting taunted by my family. We'll find her. He reassured me as he next to me and took my bag from me. Taking his own bag, we left the room. We gave the keys back to the man, who still looked a bit scared of Alexander. Thankfully our car was fixed and we wasted no time getting back on the road. Only minutes later, I felt Alexander's eyes on me from time to time, but he did not say anything. I already had an idea what he wanted to talk about, and I dreaded it. He broke the silence. Your nightmare. Do you get it often? My muscles tensed at the mention of the nightmare. Just a reminder of what happens in my nightmare was enough to make my heart skip a beat. I did not know what to do. Should I tell him partly? Should I tell him the entire thing? He did open to me a little about his family, and he has been really nice towards me during this trip. I took in a deep breath and settled on the former option. Kind of. Do you want to talk about it? He asked, and the awkwardness in his voice did not go unnoticed. I just shrugged. It's nothing new. I debated if I should give him a little bit more details. It is just snippets from the attack when I was younger. Partly true. Did you ever talk to anyone about it? Concern lacing his words. It's just a nightmare. It will go away with time. I added, knowing very well this nightmare has plagued my nights for more than 10 years. Sometimes it's good to open up. A small smile pulled at my lips as I realized he was quoting my words that I once told him. I'll keep that in mind. The panic attack. Do you get often too? He continued. That was the first time I got one, I replied before adding. How do you know about how to handle it though? He tensed slightly as I caught him off guard with the question. Still, he replied. I used to get them when I was younger. He took in a deep breath and I saw a flicker in his eyes. Due to the pressure of living up to my father's expectations, combined with my mother's death, it became too much at times. Do you still get them now? He sounded relieved and I just nodded, not knowing how to respond. Family and our past seemed to be a sore subject for both of us. Not wanting to indulge into further details, saving both of us from the pain, I decided to change topics. I still have some questions pending from yesterday, I said lightly, breaking the slight tension that was forming. Cannot wait to hear them. His voice sounded relaxed compared to how it was mere seconds away. I did not waste any time asking questions. A few questions in, I started feeling hungry. I had not eaten since lunch yesterday and I had no doubt that Xander was in the same state as me. I was surprised I did not get cranky from the hunger. I took my bag from the back seat while Alexander was thinking about a question since it was his turn. What are you doing? 5 minutes and that is the question you come up with. I taunted him as I took out a granola bar I had put in yesterday. Opening the packaging, I took a bite, content with having something to eat. You want one? I extended another granola bar towards him, but he just shook his head, still looking in front of him. Sure, you have not eaten since yesterday. I'm fine, he said, and at the same time his stomach grumbled. I let out a muffled laugh as I chewed the piece of cereal goodness. Yeah, right. I rolled my eyes as I opened the other bar's packaging before extending it towards him. Take a bite, I said, and his eyes darted to the bar in my hand. Are you allergic or something? I asked him curiously, but he just shook his head. He sighed and I knew he caved in. He reached out his hand that was on the lever butt instead of taking the bar in his hand. His hand closed around mine and he guided it towards his mouth before leaning closer and taking a bite and letting go of my hand. Either he did not realize what he did or he did not care because he focused on the road. Not thinking too much into his action, I continued eating mine, giving him a bite from his own a few times as we continued asking questions and engaging in mundane talks. Eventually, we reached the forest where we were supposed to look for Amelia. However, since the paths, if they could be called one, were too narrow and in bad conditions, taking our belongings, we continued the rest of the journey on foot. Is it me or did we get the hardest one out of the 3 places? I commented as we walked down the small path. We have been walking for so long, I lost count of time. The only thing I knew was that we did not find anything except for trees. Trees and trees. We did, Alexander said as he trailed closely behind me. Courtesy of my grandmother. I studied the map, ensuring we were not lost in this maze. How long before we reach whatever we are searching for? He asked as he moved yet another fallen trunk from the ground, making way for us to walk. According to the map, we should reach it. My eyes darted from the map to the surrounding and back to the map. Right now, we came to a stop as we scanned the surrounding. There was nothing out of the ordinary except for the chirping of birds that was non-existent since we entered this forest. Even though few light rays entered the forest, it was clear. Deep down, I felt tied to the place and felt something tug me towards the unknown. There is nothing here though, I mumbled, confused. Let's hope the other team had a better luck. As soon as he finished his sentence, my phone rang, checking the caller's name. It was Axel. We are just about to find out. I answered the phone and a pang of disappointment hit me. They were unsuccessful. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Hanging up. Should we continue walking? He took the map from my hands. Because I only see trees here. No. There's something here. I don't know what, but I feel it. I know it does not make sense, but there is something here. I am sure of it. I trust you. He said as he let me focus and scan the area. I racked my mind for anything that might help us, and finally something popped in my mind. An invisibility spell. The sessions of witchcraft from school played in my mind as we learnt about camouflage and invisibility barrier spells. Whatever is here was just hidden from our eyes, and I know that magic is involved in it. How to remove the spell? He asked, and I found myself smiling at myself. I placed both hands in front of me as I felt the magic slightly. The magic was faint but strong, and it was no surprise. Since I did not know any powerful counter spells, I decided to use the surrounding to help me. I gathered little power from within me and extracted the rest from around me, since it was already connected to the invisibility spell around here. The magic present in the air made it easier, and soon I felt a magic strong enough in me as I let more light sphere escape my palm. It went ahead, and as it collided against the barrier, a light shining layer surrounding the area became visible to the eyes. Slowly, thin lines appeared on the barrier, cracking it to pieces until it disappeared in the air, like it was never there. I gasped as an entirely different world came in view. Compared to the monotone green colors of the trees on this side, there were various trees, flowers and bushes, their colors blending together in perfect harmony as butterflies flapped their wings around the beautiful flowers. The trees were tall, even taller than where we stood, with a more prominent green pigment tinting the leaves. The leaves varied from dark green to light colors, and they were all surprisingly lined in rows, equally spaced from each other. The space between the trees were filled by flowers and bushes. Exactly in the middle of the many rows of trees, laid a large, clean path covered with different petals falling down. Jade vines grew high on the branches of the trees, their petals falling all over the place as a gentle breeze blew. I think we found what we were looking for. How did you do it? He asked, his brows furrowed in confusion as he looked at me. Magic, I said lightly as I continued walking down the path with him right behind me. And how do you do magic? I know you have many questions, but I will explain it to you later. I glanced at him from over my shoulder. Let's get this over with. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He simply said, falling in steps next to me. Not long after, we reached a small cottage in a clear area. The trees formed a circle around the cottage, acting like a shield from the world. I could not help but be amazed by the variety of flowers as I sauntered to the cozy-looking cottage. I knocked on the door twice and waited impatiently. I was excited but at the same time nervous. I heard footsteps from the other side of the door, and soon the knob twisted. Slowly the door opened. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion as the door opened, and the distinct features of the individual came in view. Long brown curls, full and plump rose lips, defined cheekbones, tanned skin, small but a nose, and the same powerful grey eyes. Amelia L. Rosa. She was alive and standing in front of us like the embodiment of perfection. Despite being old, she looked young due to our werewolf genes. Every movement of hers carried a certain grace as she smiled politely at us. Please come in. Thanking her, we stepped in the warm cottage, the scent of flowers immediately hitting my nose. She guided to a small seating area where she motioned for us to sit. I am guessing you are not here for a stroll or some vacation. I cleared my throat. Actually, we need your help. How could I be of any help to you too? Confused, Alexander explained the situation surrounding the vampires and the nearing war. By the end of it, Amelia looked confused, her eyes darting between both of us. Sorry, but I did not catch your names earlier. Alexander Enver. Alexander introduced himself. The king of demons. Right, she asked, and Alexander reluctantly nodded. You. She directed her question towards me. Analyze royal. I gave her a small smile, and her eyes widened slightly as realization dawned on her. The youngest daughter of King Gabriel and Queen Isabella. She asked wary, and I nodded. You are the black she-wolf. Several emotions flashed in her eyes while I felt my red water turn cold. I looked at Alexander, whose eyes were already on mine. Confused. How do you know? I know way more than you think. So you knew about this from the start. Was all this planned? Yes and no, she answered before explaining. Basically, she-wolves like us are chosen by the moon goddess. We are part of her. Before we are born, our destiny is already written by her. Being a black she-wolf does not only signify having strength and power, but also having the ability to control them instead of abusing of it. She chooses each one of us for a reason. Analyze, and she's never wrong. Why did she choose me, though? That can only be answered by the moon goddess only. How did you know why she chose you if she's the only one that has the answers? Alexander voiced out. All black she-wolves have a special power, unique to each. I can summon the moon goddess, she explained. I did not know you were a black wolf until one day. The moon goddess told me about you. By special powers, what do you mean? Everybody has different powers. She started. I have the ability to summon the moon goddess. There once was a wolf who could control the weather. Is witchcraft one of them? There are two types of witchcraft. All of us possess the basic witch magic, like casting spells. For you, though, you can also control the elements. As in all. Till now I only used my magic for basic spells and once in a while to create fires, yes. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. Water. Wind. You control them all. Why though? Why does she choose us? Each one of us has a purpose. Mine was the war against the vampires. So that means I also have one. She hummed in response. You know that it is. The war against the vampires. Alexander voiced out beside me while I was still trying to take in the information. Which is why I cannot help you, she continued. This is your fate, and I cannot interfere with it until you have completed what you came here for. Her smile was encouraging. You have been chosen for a reason. I have just met you, but I am certain you have all the qualities to succeed. You just need to have faith in yourself. I gave her a small smile. If you don't mind me asking, why do you stay alone? I asked as I looked around as an attempt to clear my head. Did you not find your mate yet? Her smile contorted in one of sadness as her eyes glazed slightly at my question, and I felt guilty. Being a black she-wolf comes with a great sacrifice. Analyze. We are powerful and can get whatever we want, but we cannot have a chance at finding true love. We don't have mates. I froze in my seat. Which is why the moon goddess has to choose one each time. So we are not supposed to have mates. I looked at Alexander, who mirrored my perplexed expression. Not even if they are from the other kind. No, she looked at me warily. Then how do you explain the two of us being mates? Chapter 28 analyzes POV. She wore a shocked expression as she froze in her seat, her eyes wide, not believing a word I just said. She stayed in the same position for the next minute, but she looked deep in thought as her eyes darted between the two of us. You two are me? She asked once again to confirm yes. Both me and Alexander answered at the same time. My legs shook as I got more nervous with every passing second. Amelia, say something. I said out loud impatiently. Are you sure yes? Alexander replied while I just sat there waiting for you to answer. At his response, Amelia got up and started pacing the room, hurt and skin paler than before. Amelia, I said once again. I don't know. She looked at me. None of us has had a mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. I don't know how you have one. My life surely broke every stereotype out there. But, she said, her eyes lighting up for a split second, I know someone who can. The moon goddess. I chimed in. She nodded before instructing us to follow her. I gave Alexander a side glance and he looked confused like me, but nonetheless we matched her strides as she frantically moved out of the living room. She led us to another small room where there were shelves displaying several colored solutions and different types of herbs kept in boxes. In the middle of the room, there was a mysterious circle made up of an equally mysterious white ash. Despite the mysterious vibe of the room, it was warm and welcoming. We stood near the door as Amelia gathered candles and lit them up around the circle, evenly spaced. She proceeded to fill in the gaps with some crushed herbs. This is where I usually come to communicate with the moon goddess. She informed us as she added the last thing she needed. But, she said, looking at us, and I nearly let out a groan at the word. When something involved a but, something good almost never followed. Only one person can talk to her. She finished. So who will it be? She will go. Alexander said before I could reply. I just shrugged and moved towards her, stepping into the circle while both of them stood outside it. Amelia mumbled some words that I could not make out. I looked at Alexander standing behind her. He gave a curt nod, looking deep in thoughts. As soon as Amelia finished, she exited the room along with Alexander. A few seconds later, a white light appeared opposite to where I was sitting. It slowly faded away to reveal the calm and beautiful moon goddess. All the rumors surrounding her beauty did her no justice. Her light blue eyes, long blonde hair, flawless skin, everything was just perfect. I just stared at her, wide-eyed. How can I help you, dear? She smiled lightly. Her sweet, calming yet at the same time powerful voice echoed in the room. Her voice sounded like a soft melody to the ears that I could keep listening to. I needed answers, moon goddess. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Smiling slightly in her comforting presence. How come I have a mate when black she-wolves are not supposed to have one? My dear, to every story, there are two sides. I can't tell you both, but I will tell you my side. She started. Black she-wolves don't have mates because many male wolves do not agree having someone more powerful than them as their mate. She said sadly. I already know the lives and future of everyone before they are born, and yours too. You knew what would happen in my life. She nodded. About my family and everything else, yes. Which is why I chose to give you a mate. When I chose you to be a black wolf, I already knew the struggles you would have to face in your life, but I also knew you would overcome them. Whether it would be alone or with someone else. So you knew that I would come here searching for you one day. Confused. The future I see is what should have happened. Unless due to some interference there might be some changes. I looked at her, an eyebrow raised inquisitively. In your future, I never saw you coming here. She explained. Then, it was all because of your family. Due to certain unseen events, they did not change for the good, and hence it led you to become who you are today. Seeing you here today, so strong and powerful, I can say I made the right choice. She smiled lovingly at me. What about having a mate? I asked again. When I saw your life, even if it is slightly different from how things currently are, I could not see one of my child being mistreated. Let's say, I paired you with someone who had the same fate as yours. Alexander is my mate because he had the same fate, being mistreated. To parts of the story analyze, she reminded me, you know where to find the second part. I know. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice merely a whisper as the though of what happened to Alexander rushed through my mind. Sometimes, when we join to broken pieces together, it may not be the same as it once was, but it surely creates something new. Sometimes, something even better. Her words made sense but also confused me. One more thing. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Why me? She chuckled slightly before answering. You underestimate yourself too much, dear. You just need to dig deep inside of you, and you will find out what you can actually do. Trust me, my judgment are never wrong. You are who you are for a reason. If you paired Alexander and I together, why does he not want to admit it? He does not act like my mate. Second part of the story, she simply said. Are you sure he does not act like your mate? I believe he helped you sometimes, yes. I sighed as memories of him holding me close to him during my panic attack and nightmare came to my mind. The car ride and his other little actions that meant a great thing to me. I think you have all the answers you needed, dear. Yes, thank you. I bowed my head to her. Good luck, Annalise. No matter the path taken, we always end up where we need to be. You were chosen for a reason. Dig deep inside you when then time comes. I raised my head, but she was already gone. Only her calm presence lingering in the room. I got up, dusted my pants before leaving the room. Did you get your answers? Amelia asked as I stepped outside. Yes, I smiled lightly at her. She returned my smile with of her own before dragging me to the living room where Alexander was already seated. Now that you have gotten your answers, should we get back to why you came here? She asked as I took a seat. What does the symbol on the map represent? When the first ever black she-wolf was chosen, she had this mark on her. We don't have it became the symbol of our kind. The Vampire King. I reminded her. How did you kill him? Just like there's a special type of silver that kills werewolves, there is a special type of stick to kill him. She informed us. Once you manage to stab him with it, his army will withdraw since they will have no one to lead them. Try killing him as quick as possible. Where do we find the stake? The fallen stake. She smiled at me, a glint in her eyes. Under the moonlight lies the key to your problem. Find it and open the door to your solution. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I did pending. It took me a great deal to find that stake. I cannot just give it to you on a platter. She chuckled and I groaned. Thank you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We will search for it. We should get going. Alexander added. Good luck with the war, Amelia said as she escorted us to the door. We took the path back to our car, but neither me nor Alexander said a word. I did not know what happened to him, but now I was bent on finding out. Chapter 29 analyzes POV. The way back to the castle was silent and slightly tensed. Both of us whirled round in rivers of our own thoughts after the new revelations. We went to find answers from Amelia and we did get them, but we also got more questions as a gift. A gift none of us asked for. Bang, the car screeched to a stop as a heavy object fell right in front of us as we passed the open gates of the castle, bringing me out of my trance. Kill, Alexander muttered. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Are you fine? He looked at me, assessing me. Just a bit shaky, I said as I looked out the window. What was that, though? We both got out of the car, rounding it until we stood side by side in front of the hood. A huge rock was on the floor. Pieces of it scattered over the place from the impact with the ground. I looked around when I felt a shadow over me for a split second. I squinted my eyes as I looked at the bright sun shining in the sky. My jaws dropped to the floor when I saw two majestic dragons circling us above, screeching. "Since when do we have dragons here?" I pointed towards them. It was the first time I ever saw a dragon. Both of them were beautiful with beautiful scales adoring their muscled bodies. While one had red scales, the other had blue scales, and from down here they looked like fire and ice. While I was busy taking them in, I did not realize Derek, the werewolf who fought against me alongside Rayan, approach us. He seemed better from the last time I saw him, which was the day of the fight. "Sorry for the inconvenience, King Denver." He acknowledged Alexander's presence and I held back a scoff. I must have hurt his ego pretty bad that day. We were attacked by the vampires again and the dragons helped us. They got a bit overprotective. "Inconvenience." "They nearly killed us," I said sarcastically, loud enough for him to hear as I went to retrieve my bag from the car. As I walked past him towards the castle, he let out a menacing growl and I felt the aura of his wolf in the air. Already irritated from today's events, I could not control myself as I turned around, my hands reaching around his neck. He wheezed as I applied some pressure in my hold as I slowly lifted his body off the floor. His eyes glowed as his claws made their appearance, but he struggled to move. "Next time you disrespect me, you will no longer have a head." I let him go and he fell to the floor. I gave him an innocent smile as I turned around, walking back to the castle, not missing the small smirk playing on Alexander's face. "Well, look who's here," Raina said as I entered the foyer. "Not now, Raina." I cut her off sharply with a glare. "Whatever. There is a meeting in an hour. Get ready and come, though your presence is not necessary," she said in a mocking tone. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Don't confuse others with you." After a quick shower, I found myself sitting in the half-empty meeting room. Most of the leaders were still out scouting except for King Tarsal and Queen Eleanor. Along with them, there were a few new faces around the table who I was guessing were now on our side. We all sat around the table in our usual seats as we waited for my family except for my grandmother who was already here. My eyes wandered on their own before they settled on Alexander, who was talking to his second-in-command, though it looked like the other one was talking and Alexander was just listening. The second part of the story, I pulled my gaze away from him as I felt someone staring at me. Next to his second-in-command sat a girl who was looking straight at me, a smirk on her face. My brows furrowed in confusion, but it was short-lived as the rest entered the room. They took their seat and King Elijah, the leader of dragons, spoke up. "We are thankful that you agreed to become allies with us despite our absence when you called us. We were allies with the vampires. He informed us and suddenly the atmosphere turned tensed. They backstabbed us. They stole the staff of the warrior dragon and used it against us. We hope that we can work together and win this war." He turned in my direction as he spoke. "Sorry for the inconvenience outside. My people are still on edge after what happened." I just nodded and he turned to face Alexander, who also just nodded. "We look forward to working together with you, King Elijah and King Leon." King Leon, King of Griffins, nodded. "We have to act fast after yesterday's attack. Had it not been for the help of the dragons and griffins, we would have lost," my grandmother said. "Alpha Axel and Queen Eleanor's team did not find anything about Eleanor. Did you find anything, King Denver?" My father asked him and I rolled my eyes as he exempted my name. "Yes, we met her," Alexander answered. "She cannot help us with the war. She gave us some information that could help." I let out a relieved sigh as he did not mention anything about my powers, which are... Rayan cut him off and Alexander's face contorted to one of annoyance. "There is a stake which she used to kill the Vampire King. We need to find it." "How will we find it?" Rayan butted in again, a smirk on his face as he clearly enjoyed this. "She gave us a riddle, but I doubt you will be able to solve it. So, Leave it to us and we will inform you once we do. Wei An glared at Alexander, but the red rushing from his neck to his cheeks did not go unnoticed as I gave him a side glance. King Elijah, is the staff still with them? Yes, do you know how we can destroy it? It is the strongest magical artifact for us dragons that it petrifies others with a single hit. It is really difficult to destroy it. We either need a stronger magical artifact or someone really powerful. We are short on time. Queen Eleanor is the most powerful witch. King Tarso intervened. I doubt my powers will suffice. Queen Eleanor explained, what if you converge magic with the other witches? My mother suggested. We will require a lot of focus. Being on a battlefield will leave us with very little. As much as I wanted to help destroy the staff with the help of my one powers, I bit my tongue and sat back in my chair. I felt guilty for not helping, but I was not ready. I only know how to control fire. I had no clue. As I looked around the table, I found Alexander looking at me. I wondered what he was thinking about me right now. Did he think of me as someone selfish for not offering to help? But then again, he has shown me another side of him in the past few days, and I doubt he would reach any conclusion without understanding the situation. Do they have any other allies? King Tarsal asked. He never called all of us together, but I think he is together with the giants and fallen angels. King Leon said. Not only did they have the staff, but also more allies. That is it for today. We will discuss this once again once the others are back. Until then, Queen Eleanor, could you take care of the staff? Grandmother concluded as Queen Eleanor gave her a nod. King Alexander and Annalise tried to find the stake as soon as possible. The dragons and griffins are requested to join the trainings. With this being said, everybody started leaving. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.